Hello again. My name is Jay, aka Lord Gazumba, and here's another episode of Gabbin at Lord Peakshaven. This week I'm not going to have a guest on. Instead, I'm going to discuss the main group that is the background for my entire 38 plus year campaign, the Order of Ulek. We'll go together and talk about some things like how it was formed, some of the characters, locations, and what's in store for the future here. So why don't we get started and talk about the timeline, which is in Greyhawk appears to be an issue with starting a campaign. It seems like it always starts in 581, 582. It just appears to be where the Greyhawk Wars are. Well, when we started back in, and I'm talking, this is like 78, 79. If you've ever read some of the Dragon magazines, the campaigns were called Monty Hall. And basically that was where anything goes, and no one knew what they were doing, and the treasures were crazy, and everyone had a +5 sword running around. Well, you know, being at that age, 12 years old, we really had no idea what we were doing. So before I started logging adventures, which would be in like 1980, we played a lot of like one-offers with our group. All of our characters were named our names. So each player had, we had a William the Conqueror, we had someone named Matt, we had, of course, and Jay the Great, of course, right? But back then we ran a lot of stuff, and it got real crazy on how high the level went. And I guess it was probably in this, we're looking at the summer of 79, ran, and this is early first edition, ran a surprise invasion from, believe it or not, the Hold of the Sea Princes with the Yeomanry into Keelan, Starich. We called it the Great Sheldamar Valley War, and what happened was, Keelan was surprised, lost a lot of land, had a lot of battles. It was very, very high-end Monty Hall stuff, but it kind of set the basis for what we were doing. In the meantime, when that was going on, the Pomars came through the Sus and attacked Selene with thousands of armies. And our characters at that time, we had a lot of half-elven, half-elves were the big thing back then, and everyone was a worshiper of Alana, and Greyhawk was your, one or the other. We had an affinity because of the Deities and Demigods book for the lawful good characters to be a Finnish deity, Ukko, who we still kind of have ported over, to some consternation for some of my players, but we've ported over some deities from other mythos and a couple from actually Forgotten Realms that fit in real well. And so you were one or the other. If you were elf, you were usually worshipping Alana because you were neutral good or chaotic good, and if you're Ukko, you were lawful good. It just seemed to be the way it went back then. But so there was an alliance between Selene and the group of characters. And what happened was there was a big battle, and they defeated the humanoids in Selene. And if you look on the map I have put up, you will see at the very bottom of the Jewel River, it's Wales Castle. There was nothing along that entire border in the Principality of Ulek down the river at that time. So what we did was, hey, this is a good place to put a castle, a keep, your lord status. Where can we put it? So it was placed there, and when that was done, the idea came up to form a group of, and it didn't have to be just fighters, but you had to be of good alignment, called the Order of Ulek, considering that it was going to be defending the Ulek states, because we had a lot of demi-human characters besides humans in the adventuring group. Slow on dwarves though, and we'll get to that in a second, but and a lot of elven characters. So the group was very allied with Selene. Wales Castle came into being, and we went from there. From there, if you look up, it's very light. The idea was to connect a series of keeps along the Jewel River all the way up to, and it didn't exist at that time yet, but you see Altamira at the top, and that's actually in the county of Ulek. It's right on that border area. That used to be what we call the Cavalier School. So going back time-wise, the original group, when we call it the first generation of characters, was all our named characters for the most part adventured in a timeline series, and we're talking about starting around 569, because the group participated in the Battle of Emerald Meadows, and the biggest fight outside of for the Temple of Elemental Evil before the module came. That was the lore that we had placed, and a lot of stuff happened in that that area of Hamlet. And of course, you always did the G series, D series. All the modules that were out at the time were done, and so when we started playing with other characters, we called that the second generation, and kind of we evolved out of the Monty Hall era of playing. We're looking at 1980. Had some great characters, and from there, kind of that group is now like the senior members. The first generation is all retired or gone off to wherever they have gone, or we're really talking about the second generation of characters to come in. I'd say you're looking at multiple generations beyond that, but that's where we really started, and that's where I started logging adventures. So we're talking about 1980, when I was 13, 14 years old. We really started off on the campaign itself, and having it based around this order of knights. Like I said, you could be any class in the knighthood, but you had to be of good alignment. So in order to petition, what happened would be you'd have to be 6th level. You'd have to come in and petition, and at the time we had rankings, but we got rid of them, just made it you're an apprentice up until you got your lord status and level, which is normally 9th, some classes 10th, and you had to do one main mission for the knighthood to get your knight status before you became a true knight member. So what happened at that point, and we're talking now game time, there was the war with the Sea Princes and the war of the Pomage that went into the 580s, so we're talking about our timeline, which is completely different than the timeline of canon of From the Ashes box set and onward. We kind of changed that up and pushed that down 10 years into the 590s, no big deal, and worked with it from there, because all that stuff was great content and we wanted to use it, so that was not a problem. So you're looking at around 583, the Order of Ulek was formed, and from that point on, in game time 583, we're talking 1980, I started logging adventures, and to show you, we have 15 pages of logged adventures, and I'll go over some highlights just real quick on numbers. Number 1, the Battle of Outpost number 1. Number 18, this is for Mark, the Battle Royale, and that was in down the road, so you still got a long time before the next one. Number 38, the original Temple of Elemental Evil that we ran. Number 118, one of the best off-game license modules ever, the first time we ever ran Fortress Elendar. Number 119 was my homage to my friend Tim, one of the best adventures I ever ran, where someone else was DMing the Wizard of Id, but I called it, in my mind, it was called the Wizard Stidge. That was a 119. Jump ahead to number 337. The module published Return of the Eight. All right, so now you can see where we're getting into tensors coming back from in that adventure. So you continue onward. Number 465 was a module called Chaos Rising, a big one done. Number 696 was called Sailin' Made Me Do It, and that ended a story arc that I had begun 15 years earlier, culminating in that adventure. And then just a month or two ago, number 816, Expedition to the Ruins of Greyhawk Chapter 6. We finally finished that up with the same group that did Salem Made Me Do It, the Iron Brigade, out of Greyhawk City. So we are now running up to adventure number 823. So that's where we are as far as number of adventures, but it's been fun, absolutely. But going through a time frame, we're looking at over 38 years of all these adventures being run. So you can calculate how many we've done a year. And the time frame of the game moves. We're in 635 in our campaigns, so you're looking at 1.5 at most years of Greyhawk time going when we have 1 year of real life time, and that's basically where we are in that. But getting back to the Order of Ulek, so in 583 the Order of Ulek was formed with some key members, and then it grew from that point on. And we're looking at now, and I put up part of the sheet of showing a bunch of the characters, but we have 206 members have joined, and they are player characters and NPCs. Some are player characters that are in groups. Some of them are general non-player characters that just interact, and some work in the parties as well. So time frame, you're starting in 583, and you can see that we have, if you go to the map, outpost number 1 and outpost number 2 were first built on the Jewel River, and a road was created called the East Ulek Road. Now, a little bit of the history here, and I have a listing of a bunch of key members in the Order of Ulek, and some associated members or not. The far figure on the far right, the Prince of Ulek, was not a fan of the Order of Ulek. He saw it as, and Celine was a rival, he saw that as us as interlopers without permission to, even though the defense to the Pomars was secure, we were there without his blessing. And since that point, there has been severe antipathy between the dwarves of the Principality of Ulek and the Order of Ulek. So the irony is that the Order of Ulek gets along much better with the Duchy of Ulek and Celine than where most of their bases are in the Principality of Ulek. So if you look at this map, and this map has to be 15, 20 years old, and it was done probably in old Corel paint, where I was able to edit some of the features on it. You have some of the other adventuring members have keeps along the river. You have Herbie, Andrea Winchester, Garth Warmonger, and then out into the Pomars you have 2 Watchers Towers that are manned by Order of Ulek personnel, basically to keep an eye to make sure there are no large army incursions in, and they're attacked constantly. And we do some adventures out there. So the Order of Ulek has branched out beyond just this area, and so let me go over some of the characters and try and explain how the structure works on this. Remember, this is like the second generation of characters. We're looking in the in the time frame of between 595 and 600. This group taking over and now is in control. It's been for a while because a lot of them are elves and half elves, but you probably know from my site in the first set of figures, you have Gazamba, Lord Gazamba, who's an NPC of mine, but he was a player character of mine when my friend Tim ran adventures, including that famed adventure I was telling you about, Wizard of Id. He ran Dark Tower for me once, which was fantastic, and a lot of other adventures. He had 2 characters named Fensick and Leuven. So Lord Gazamba, along with his best friend and the figure next to him, Hawk, adventured together in a foursome almost when we did some when we did some one-on-one adventuring with it was great times back, and I'm talking about high school era and that's how those characters were developed. But if you look at some of the, and I'll pull this off so I can make a reference to some of the characters and levels. Gazumba is a 11, 12 fighter cleric mage, half elven. He's from Selene. He's from House Gistrul. In a future Gabbin, I'll go over how we do greater and lesser houses. It's basically there's a noble house of 10 families in Selene, and then there's a lot of lesser houses in Selene. It's not, I wouldn't say it's similar to the Dark Elven structure, but it just it provides a little bit layers of intrigue, you could say. So he's from a lesser house, House Gistrul. He married into an upper house. He was married to an elf named Cyrenese. She was killed permanently in an adventure called Apollo's Revenge. And I think we're looking back in number 48. So he's been a widower ever since, and kind of changed his personality, got a little more serious at that time. I guess that would affect anyone, but he got a little more serious against the cause of evil at that point after that happened. His best friend Hawk, who's not an officer, he's a little, if you can see, he's a foppish, roguish type. He's a 12th fighter, 14th thief. No strength, not one of those strength bonus fighter types. An interesting character. He always seems to get severely maimed or legs cut off during adventures, but always comes out surviving, and they've been best friends. He's from House Paddlemeal, another lesser house of Selene, and they've been friends ever since. But Hawk is not a very... and by the way, the name was made before I even know the movie Hawk the Slayer, so the irony's there, if anyone knows that great flick with Jack Palance. It's worth watching one time. So the D&D movies of the 70s, late 70s and early 80s are very entertaining because they're so cheesily done, but it's great to watch once or twice. They were friends, and Gazumba took over running the Order of Ulek and has been ever since. The next figure is an NPC right out of the G module series back, character sheets, named Funkin' Hottie Peak. Great thing about Funkin' Hottie Peak was everyone loved him because I think he had a ring of regeneration to start. So he stuck around, and he just was a thorn in the side to some of my players that were difficult back in the day. He was the antagonist factor. So he currently now is 14 fighter mage, semi-retired. I haven't run him an adventure in years, but he's also the 17th member of the Order of Ulek. So on the card, he's the highest up on here. He's been around longer. 585 was the year he joined. So and he's a high elf. Very fun character, and he's a second in command of the Order of Ulek. No one wants him to be in command. He's very kind of good. So he's kind of like he goes off to the emissary to do traveling and talk to other kingdoms. Third in command is Andrea Winchester from the Winchester clan of adventurers out of Keeland. We'll do an entire episode for them sometime in the future. She is a 14th level Cavalier Paladin. Very lawful good, very stern, but has had a child out of wedlock years ago. There are rumors as to who the father is, but no one knows. But her daughter Alexis Winchester is fully grown up. That's how long we've been playing, and she's a member of the Order of Ulek as well. So the time frames, we're talking over this 38-year period, you get a lot of different generational things, which is kind of cool. So she has a bronze dragon steed she rides occasionally. Once again, character that is really not played actively in adventuring, but is in the hierarchy of the Order of Ulek. She has one of the keeps on the Jewel River. She has the furthest one out, as you can see on the bend in the river. That actually butts up almost to the Draken's Grabs. The next set of figures, very interesting character. He's not he's kind of retired, older. Herbie the White, aka Herbie the Dipped. And the reason we say that is this has got to be the oldest figure. I think this is from the original Fighter D&D box set. Basically, it looks like I think Alan actually painted this one. He took the figure and it looks like it's dipped in white enamel paint with little splashes of flesh tone and red for the cross put on there. And so we keep that figure. It's just, so old and has so much story behind it. So that's why he's called Herbie the White. He actually has 3 children: Hessler Abdalis, Liesel Abdalis, and Heidi Abdalis, and they're all in their 20s and members of the Order of Ulek as well. So he married Lady Abdalis, I think, of Waybury from the Duchy of Ulek. We had a whole wedding ceremony for that, along with a murder mystery that went on with it at the same time. And we're going back again another 25 years when that happened. So if you continue down now, as far as structure goes beyond the top 3, in order of ranking, as far running the Order of Ulek, the hierarchy has spread out so that there's areas of influence across the phalanx. The Order of Ulek has, gone to assist other areas and works so that we can do adventuring parties all over the place. So there's 5 other areas of influence, and they would be the Pomarge, they would be Greater Selene, they would be Greyhawk City, the Shieldlands, and the Vespi Forest. So those 5 all have a commander and then an XO as far as who is in control of overseeing the day-to-day functions of any knighthood activities in those areas. So if we start with the second panel beyond Herbie, you have Railstone Gradavis. He is a Railstone Gradavis. This is the first. So he is, I think, the great, man, it's confusing. He's the uncle of David Gradavis, who, well, we'll get to that too. That'll be an adventure coming up this weekend. Railstone is the in control and command of the Shieldlands areas. He's a native Shieldlander, so he is the CO for there. So we run a lot of Shieldlands adventures ever since the From the Ashes box set came out. A lot of warring ongoing there. The Shieldlands has never been fully retaken. Probably they're at 40% maybe of land retaken. So that will continue onward. And that's something we're going to be doing this upcoming weekend. Along with next figure over, one of the most interesting characters in the entire campaign. And by the way, let me go back. Sorry, I'm for bouncing around. Railstone Gradavis, 10th level Paladin, 9th level Specialty Priest of Ilmater, has not surpassed his original. He's a dual class human, so he only has his Specialty Priest abilities. He's been working on them for years, but he's getting there. So next, Garth Warmonger, half orc, 10th fighter, 10th cleric, claims to have banged every female in the entire campaign, including Lady Roltip, Selene, Berdemart, any of the figures you have up here. I mean, it's not an NPC. That's all I'll say. He is. You can see he has a keep along the Jewel River as well. He's the commander of the Pomarge, and if I recall correctly, we have no XO currently in the Pomarge. We're going to branch out with a new group of firsts eventually. Venturing out of this area and do some more character development for that upcoming. But he's a very, very it's a likable character. I enjoy him thoroughly when he plays him. And he's good. He's very good. He's worked his way up to gain respect of everyone. You know, it's tough to be a half orc and gain respect of a lot, especially elves, but he has, and so hopefully we'll see some more great things out of Garth Warmonger. Next character over is Temporal Lakesland. She is by the way, so this whole panel is all player characters for other for people in my group. Temporal is a I believe a high elf, and she is a multi-class fighter cleric as well, 10/10. She is the CO for Greater Salim, so that would be anything that goes into the Welkwood, anything in the Verbank area, the Cron Hills, Sus Forest incursions. So Temporal is in has the responsibility of that area. One of my was one of Mark's characters, and another very resilient character. As you can see, back in the day, with a lot of old characters where the multi-classism was going crazy before we added a lot of specialty classes. So we have a lot of even triple classes. We have a lot of those as well. Next panel over, you see a redhead. That's a human female, dual class, and Corellia Crakesbone, 7th fighter paladin, dual class to 10th level specialty priest of Uko, and was a player character's top character for a while. That person no longer plays, so I took her over as an NPC. She's the CO for Greyhawk City. Was an adventurer in the Iron Brigade in Greyhawk City. Now she is stationed at the, and if you know anything about Greyhawk City, there used to be the Knights of the Holy Shielding building up in the High Quarter. What happened was, when the Greyhawk Wars came, the Order of Ulek, our organization, bought the entire building from the Knights of the Holy Shielding because they were so desperate for money. But we gave back half the building back to the Knights of the Holy Shielding. So there's joint offices for the Knights of the Holy Shielding and the Order of Ulek in that building now. So that way that the Knights of the Holy Shielding tend to have an uneasy alliance with the Order of Ulek, and a lot of the Knights of the Holy Shielding, which a lot of them tend to be lawful neutrals, see them as interlopers into their business. Typical political BS between organizations. But going to the next character over after Corellia is David Gradavis, the second. So I think he's Railstone is his great uncle. I get confused. I'll have to ask Mark. Another dual class, 7th cleric, 10th paladin. He is one of the 3 members of the Greater Oligarchy now in the Shieldlands. He is a Knight of Ulek, but he really functions. He's from the Shieldlands and does everything he can to save and protect the Shieldlands from incursions from Ias. And he was elected 10 years ago to one of the 3 oligarchy positions to help defend the Shieldlands, which was Lady Katarina Walworth was one. Lady Valderessa Sharn was one, if you know the canon on the original Greyhawk box set. And one of the things we did not like in the Greyhawk box set, going from Greyhawk to From the Ashes, is they just killed off a bunch of people, including she. But we did not have that happen in our campaign, so she's still there. And David Gravis is the 3rd oligarch. And they work with the Knights of the Holy Shielding and the Order of Ulek to, push back the threat of evil, and have been successful, retaking a lot of the Shieldlands. Not all of it, and we're gonna have a big adventure going up there very shortly. The next character is Ashley Winchester, 12th level Paladin Cavalier, younger sister to Andrea Winchester. And there's been an on and off tryst between Ashley and David Gradavis for years, and they're about to be wed after all these years. The adventure that I'm running soon is called Events Before David Gradavis' Wedding. So we're going to see what happens there. But it's been like a culmination of many years of courtship and on again, off again. So we've had a lot of fun with that, and so I put her in here just to throw that out there, that there's going to be a little romance upcoming in our next adventure we are running. The character after that is Jolaine Chauncer, and she is a 10th level Cavalier. She was rescued by David and Railstone Grativus in an adventure in the Shieldlands a long way back. She became a Knight of Ulek and is basically the crossover emissary between the Knight of Ulek characters and the Knights of the Holy Shielding. She kind of is the peacemaker. She's been secretly in love with David Grativus for years, hasn't told him, is now a little upset that he's going to be marrying Ashley. She is upset that they're going to be wed, but we'll see where that goes in the course of roleplay shortly. But that's an NPC character, and I've used her, like I said, as a crossover between the two organizations. So she's also the XO of second in command of the Shieldlands area behind Railstone. So we have a special thing in the Order of Ulek called honorary status that goes to characters that are heads of state of other locations, or there's special circumstances with the characters. It's only been done 5 times. So I have 3 of the 5 in the next panel. The 2 that are not up there, I don't know if I just couldn't locate the figures. I have so many figures downstairs. They're in some sort of order, but not close enough. So the ones not connected showing is the first one is Duke Rollborn of Selene. He is from House Relforst, second house behind in order in Selene. He would be second in for the throne if anything ever happened to Yolan, Lady Ralta of Selene. He's a retired 20th level fighter, married to another Winchester, Elaine Winchester. And they have a child named Erin Winchester, who is in the knighthood as well, and I've an active character who played who's in their early 20s. So the other one that I do not have the figure for is King Thrommel. How could I forget King Thrommel? Furiandi Valuna. If you go back to the original Temple of Elemental Evil, adventure number 38, if you know anything behind the original one, Thrommel was in stasis, I think on the third level, and it was disguised as a vampire, so that the forces of good would come in and just stab and kill him, and then you'd be destroying your ally that was kidnapped and missing. Well, our group, the original adventuring group of characters in the temple, figured it out and rescued him and brought him back, and he became once again king of Furiandi / Valuna, and they became merged. I mean, technically they're still separate. It's just easier, but he's back, and so he's always worked with the Order of Ulek and become a staunch ally. So he was given honorary knight status. He also gave his final word sword Fragarak to a character who I don't have to figure out for. It's a triple class dark elf, one of Walt's characters, fighter cleric thief named Devitt, 10th fighter, 13th cleric, 14th thief, and she lost it with a deck of many things on the wrong card pull. So that's what happens sometimes, right? But the 3 other honorary members of the Order of Ulek, we have Britta Mart, Arid Hell. She was a member of the Order very shortly. Went back to reclaim her family, which had been destroyed in Selene, the Telleran family. So that's what she's been concentrating on. She's a high-level, 16th level Cavalier. Not an Elven Cavalier, but a regular old-fashioned Cavalier. That's the first figure. That is another one of Walt's characters. The next honorary member is Sir Florum of the High Folk. He's done a lot for the Order of Ulek in the Vestby Forest. He's a high-level cavalier as well. He's like 13th level cavalier, and Sir Florham has worked with them, and he's a full elf as well, high elf. A lot of the other elven females, player characters, have always tried to court him. It's gone back and forth, but nothing has ever happened. I guess elves have a long time to work out that arrangement of marriages. So had a lot of intrigue and a lot of back and forth, but nothing has happened to this point without those relationships. And the fifth and final, which is Yolan, Lady Ralta of Selene, the ally. Selene is the main ally to the Order of Ulek, mainly because there's been so many characters that have in our campaign that have come out of Selene. Lots of Grey Elves and Half Elves have come out of Selene, and it's just been the way the campaign has gone. So Selene has always worked toward the betterment of the area. I know from the Ashes set they have Selene pulling back. It never happened in our campaign, and that's what one of the differences are. It's I also her house is House Vicstrolin. It's the top house of Selene. Melf Prince Brightflame is a member of her family. Does not want the throne, but and I don't think she'll be going anywhere in the near future. But that's just the way and we'll go over that someday in the near future. On just the breakdown of all the characters that are in houses, greater and noble and lesser houses of Selene, that have worked up in our campaign. So that's how honorary status works. There's like I said, it's only been given out 5 times. And let me shut this door. I got a window open because it's cooler today. So in order to become a member of the Order of Ulek at 6th level, you can be in any adventuring group. Normally what we do is we do spin-off adventures where it's a dedicated night adventure, and I will determine which levels they are and who's eligible out of which groups. So it can be across a number of different adventuring parties that we have, because a lot of the adventuring parties have neutrals in them, or characters that don't want to join the knighthood for one reason or another, or like most of the Harby-based adventurers are not. It has very little to do with what's going on in Harby. So we have a large mix of characters to choose from. And those tend to be the ones that are the main campaign based, as far as what happens in the whole Phalanx, or in the Sheldamar Valley, or in the Shieldlands, or in the Vestby Forest especially. There's been a lot of interesting developments up there as well. And I did not put up the commander for, her name is Branwyn. She's another high-level cavalier up in the Vestby Forest area, and I think the XO is Jonar Doombug, who's another half orc, and he's a 10/10 half orc fighter cleric who's in love with a Grey Elf, and he actually did a wish so that, like, when she's around, he appears as half elven to her. It's kind of very sentimental and cute. But he has a rivalry with Garth Warmonger. Jonar's 10/10, Garth Warmonger's 10/10. They're both half orcs. It's interesting. Neither of them do a lot of damage when they attack, but they, very resilient with their spells. So there's a very interesting dynamic going on there. So as you can see from my map, there's some other locations we've placed on this on the map of the main area. So you have a road running from the city of Altamira, which is where we did the Cavalier Training School started at, and that was adventure number 39 when that area was founded, way back in I think the mid 80s, and we had that and ran that, and that grew into a whole city. We named it Altamira, so that's kind of like a stepping point off from, and that road runs from there past a dwarven ally, and you can see down on the map Lord Koppel. He's one of the dwarven noblemen that actually get along very well with the Order of Ulek. So he's on there, and you can see a little south of that is another wonderful town, Glipdil. It is a human community, very poor, in the hills, and they have a mine there. The mine never produces much, and it connects to the Underdark, and there's always Dark Elves issues. The person running the town is named Lord Mayor Ichabod, and he has a record in our campaign for the lowest stats out of any character. He's an NPC, of course. His highest stat is 11. I think he has a couple 11s, a 4 in con, and it's comical. But he's double specialized with a footman's pick and does decent damage with it. So his name's Lord Mayor Ichabod. If you look down further south, you have Haven Hill, which was originally on the map, and south of that's Archet. It's kind of our Bree. It's a halfling, mostly halfling community with some humans. A lot of the halflings, it's like their summer home. So a lot of them have locations that they live there, and there's mirror mental prowesses or some way to get to wherever they need to get to, the higher level ones. Gryrax, south of that, is the capital of the Principality of Ulek. And so you have that road running in two directions. It's very more toward the inner curve of the Jewel, where Herbie the White's, Andre Winchester's, and Garth Warmonger's keeps are. It's very swampy and muddy. What happens when you have a lot of oxbow type rivers and stuff. It's not the nicest place in the world, but the defenses have held all these years. There's been a lot of incursions, a lot of adventures where there has been battles. In fact, the first one I ever did was called Battle of Outpost Number 1, adventure number 1 in our entire series of starting back in 1980. And we do a lot of forays into the Pomarge. And what we're going to do with a new group of firsts that I think I've already mentioned this, starting up on, is we're going to do some campaign-based adventuring, build up a group from first level in this area. So that is what we are about, the Order of Ulek. There's I try and do one big Order of Ulek adventure a year in game time or playing time. And that one, events before David Gradavis's wedding number 823, is going to be coming up starting this Thursday, as Mark, our good friend who grew up here, moved to Ohio, got married, moved to Ohio, and this is the gentleman you see falling asleep in the lower left-hand corner of our Thursday night sessions on Skype. He will be here, and his character is David Gradavis, one of the oligarchs now of the Shieldlands. And we will see what happens in that adventure. Everyone's looking forward to this. I'm still fleshing out the details on this adventure. We're going to be doing some stuff Thursday night, Friday, and Saturday. So we should have some decent broadcasts upcoming this week. But with the other Order of Ulek, we've attempted to make it not the focal point everywhere, but the glue for the entire campaign, where we use the organization that's striving to fight for good in Greyhawk, in the world of Greyhawk. And so they have influence in a lot of places, and they're not loved by everyone. There's always that political aspect going on, and we love that part of the campaign, the roleplay part of it, where you may have another organization, in particular the Knights of the Holy Shielding. You should see some of that upcoming. There's tension. When groups get together and their ethos or their end game's a little different, you get a little bit of rivalry, and I wouldn't even say friendly. As you say, you can get some antipathy there between organizations. Now, the Order of Ulek doesn't have that with the Knights of the Heart. It tends to be a little bit more pleasant because of what's happened in the Valley of the High Folk and the Vespri Forest. But and elves have a longer view on the Knights of the Heart that we deal with mostly is the elven there's three different sects, and we deal with the High Folk sect, and the elves there tend to have a longer term view on things. So I think that tells you a little bit about what the Order of Ulek is, some of the characters. If you look on this list, and you have, we've had 206 characters join, so it's a large organization, and this is, you're going on probably a third of them have become inactive or retired. I think maybe 25% have been killed off. A lot of them during a lot of the wars early on, but being good isn't easy sometimes. So we love to have characters continue to join up and continue to evolve the campaign. Campaign is spread out in a lot of different directions, and I've always been amenable to my group's changes and let's do this, let's do that, and we which is great, but the grouping, the Order of Ulek's always there in the background somewhere. And it has worked very well. And you notice there's multiple generations of characters adventuring. It gives it a lot of depth and flavor and life, because there's always something to look back on, or always something to refer in an adventure that's going on to a previous adventure. So that's been a great thing all this time, and it really helps breathe just life into what we've been doing. And that's why I think my group of players have come back so much, and we've been playing together since we were all little kids, and it's just, instead of going out and drinking with the guys on the night, sometimes we'll drink when we play, but we come, and we've been doing this for so long, through college, through everyone having jobs, everyone having families, kids, and my one son and my other player's son. We have a little mini campaign going called Greyhawk Kids. So we run that. It's G-rated, of course, and we have them running a group out of Greyhawk City, and that's been a lot of fun. So hopefully we're trying to pass this all on to the next generation of players down the road, because we're all getting older, and hopefully one day I can retire and say, hey, this was a great run. But right now, it's just, we're having too much fun doing it. So, wanted to bring this all to you. Please feel free to ask me any questions. Drop me a line on our channel on Twitch, or in Cannon Fire on Facebook. You can find me on that group. Ask me any questions about what we've done. I know there's probably a ton of things I've forgotten to mention, but that's okay. We'll go over it in the future, and you'll see stuff that just comes. And maybe if you hear some references that are going on, there's always a lot of, hey, you remember this, or this character did that, and that's what's so much fun, is that it's like, I'm not trying to be ultra nerdy here. It's almost like a real life situation that you remembered in the past, and you remembered someone did that, and so that's what my players and myself really like to reminisce about a lot. So wanted to bring this to you. This will conclude my third Gabbin at Lord Peak's Haven, the coolest bar in all of the Flanneys, out of Tring Lee in the county of Ulek. Please come visit it sometime. Like I said, drop me a line if you'd like to chat online here. I'd be more than happy to talk the game over, where it's going, where we've been, and I'll see you soon. I'll do my prelude this week for the next upcoming adventure in a few days, and then I'll see you online in a couple days will be maybe a long one. We may be running deep into the night on Thursday night for Friday broadcast, but it could be a long one. But that's the fun of it. You play till you pass out. So once again, hey, I'm Jay, aka Lord Gazumba. I'll see you soon.